Hello everyone. In today's lecture, we begin studying a new market structure called monopoly. In previous lectures, we studied perfect competition, where many firms compete and no individual firm can influence market price. Today, we move to the opposite extreme. A monopoly exists when one firm produces all of the output in the market. Because there is only one seller, the monopolist has much more control over the market than firms in perfect competition. Unlike a competitive firm, which is a price taker, a monopolist is considered as a price setter. This means the firm has the power to influence the price by deciding how much output to produce and place into the market. Examples may include the USPS in certain services, electric electric providers, and garbage collection companies in some regions. Because monopolies face little or no competition, they often earn substantial economic profits. The main reasons monopoly can survive is the existence of barriers to entry. These are obstacles that discourage or prevent new firms from entering the market. Barriers can range from relatively simple challenges such as the cost of rent to extremely restrictive barriers such as control over scarce licenses or the need for massive infrastructure. Without barriers to entry, monopoly profits would attract competitors. Now let's look at the first major type of monopoly, a natural monopoly. A natural monopoly occurs when the barriers to entry are created by the industry cost structure rather than by government law. This often happens when an industry has very high fixed cost but very low marginal cost. For example, consider an electric grid or a municipal water system. Building the network of pipes, wires, stations, and infrastructure requires enormous investment. However, once the system is built, serving one additional customer costs very little. Because of this, one large producer can often serve the entire market more cheaply than multiple smaller competitors. Natural monopoly may also arise in smaller local markets for products that are difficult to transport. For example, one stadium or one professional sports team may act as a monopoly in a smaller geographical region because demand is not large enough to support several teams. Another source of monopoly power is control of a scarce natural resource. Historically, De Beers controlled much of the diamond market, and Alcor once had a strong influence over bauxite used for aluminum production. In all of these examples, one firm gains market dominance because competition is either too costly or impractical. Now let's interpret the graph of a natural monopoly. The demand curve intersects the long-run average cost curve at point E0. Notice that this intersection occurs on a downward sloping portion of the long-run average cost curve. That downward slope represents the economies of scale, meaning average cost falls as output increases. At point E0, the market supports an output of 5,000 units at price P1. This tells us something very important. The market demand is only large enough for one firm to operate efficiently. If two or three firms enter the market, each would produce a smaller quantity and each would face a higher average cost. So a natural monopoly exists when total quantity demanded in the market is less than quantity needed to reach the minimum point of the long-run average cost curve. This means one firm can serve the market at lower cost than several competing firms. Now let's look at a legal monopoly. Legal monopoly exists when the government creates barriers to entry by restricting or prohibiting competition. This means monopoly power is granted or protected by law. Examples include the U.S. Postal Service in some mail services and public utilities such as electricity, water, or garbage collection in many local markets. Now let's discuss monopoly power that exists to encourage innovation. Research and development often require large investments of time and money. If competitors immediately copy successful inventions, firms might have little incentive to innovate. To solve this problem, governments protect intellectual property. The patent gives an inventor the exclusive legal right to make use or sell an invention for a limited time. A trademark protects an identified symbol, logo, or brand name connected to a product. A copyright protects original works such as books, music, movies, and software from unauthorized copying for commercial purposes. Trade secrets protect confidential business methods or production techniques that firms keep private. These protections may create temporary monopoly power, but the long-term goal is to encourage creativity, research, and investment. Deregulation means removing government controls over prices and quantities in industries such as airlines, banks, and steel. Deregulation is often intended to increase competition and reduce monopoly power. Okay, now let's look at how firms may discourage competition through aggressive strategies. One example is predatory pricing. Predatory pricing occurs when a large firm temporarily cuts prices sharply, sometimes below cost, to drive competitors out of the market. This behavior violates US law, although it is often difficult to prove. Let's follow the example shown here. First, a small startup enters a market or route dominated by a large incumbent firm. Second, the large firm cuts prices aggressively. The smaller competitor usually has fewer financial resources and may not survive long periods of losses. Third, the small competitor exits or goes bankrupt. Then the incumbent raises prices again to monopoly levels. This behavior can also scare away future competitors. Even without formal legal barriers, aggressive pricing strategies can help maintain monopoly power. Thank you for watching.